Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Open Forum, Candid, frank, and live as always. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Joining me now is Nadia Guerrera. She is the future candidate for York South in Weston. First of all, and most importantly, welcome to the program, and thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Frank. Thank you so much for having me here with you today.
Now, you interest me in the sense that, as a teacher, we live in a time, where I think it's really important to understand there are a lot of reasons why we live the way we live today, and
Mhm.
I think a lot of it has to do with how we're raised and what we believe. And when I say raised, I'm not talking about our parents. As a teacher, as a prospective politician, what contribution do you think that you can make to our children, and how they become adults? Because I'm a firm believer that we've lost please, thank you, stupid little things like that are missing. And I think that kindness is missing. And what can you offer us to help? And what do you think is most important? I think that's what's missing in my mind.
So that's a great question, Frank. Thanks so much for it. Well, I will start by saying that I've been a teacher for the past 20 years, actually. This is my 20th year teaching, and today was my last day before I left for the campaign. So lots of emotion there. I will say in those 20 years, I can tell you it's not something I'm going to do. It's something I've been doing all along because I think you reap what you sow. And when you invest in education, writ large from a provincial standpoint, you get a really good system. And Ontario's is a world-class system, and we have to continue to develop that into the 21st century. And we can talk about that a bit more later. But for now, I will say that as a teacher, what you do is you bring who you are into every interaction with every student. The kindness you're speaking about in the world, that is not something you just teach. That's something you live and you teach by example. Um, the positivity, all of that's there. There might be things that appear to be missing, but I can tell you every day on the front line that it's not as missing as you think it is. Uh, Students are, in my experience over 20 years, thoughtful, good people. And when they're in good, nurturing environments and systems that believe in them and create opportunities and pathways for them, it brings out the best in who they are. So I just want to assure you, Frank, that it's not as bad as it looks from the outside. Um,
I didn't mean to imply it was bad. I just there's to put it bluntly, there is we're learning, our children are learning that a lack of respect is acceptable today. Whether that's intended or whether that's the truth or not, I guess we can discuss, but I can point examples. So, it as a teacher, it's important to me to ask you because you're at the beginning of children in their development. And as a high school teacher, you're
yes.
basically at that transition between going from a child to being an adult.
Yes, and honestly, I think we've seen, especially now after COVID, right? There's been a real gap, not just in learning, in terms of academic learning, but also in terms of learning about social skills and those kind of interactions. And so I actually feel there needs to be a lot of work going forward around that. And I mean, I work in a staff at Chaminade College, which is very much aware of that. We talk about it and how to build it in. And every moment that maybe a student isn't acting or responding in a way that we would think is ideal, there's that moment that's a teachable moment. And if you approach it as a teachable moment and you do it in consultation and dialogue with the student, maybe their parents, depending on the situation, you can actually heal something in that moment and move forward in a different way. It's all about how you approach it. But I am here to tell you that from 20 years on the front line and what I'm seeing today after COVID, there are real gaps and areas for nurturing that have to exist there within our system. And we can't forget that the people who work on that front line, not just me, but so many of my colleagues across the province, do that every day. We do it quietly. We do it with great love. Um, you know, So that's the teacher in me speaking. Um, and I don't know, I want to assure you that as we continue to do that work and invest in that kind of system, we're going to get the best of students in Ontario and children and so on. There's
I,
lots.
I'm
Those are pivotal moments. I believe it's, to me, I believe it's important work. I've given my life to it, you know? So,
Ms. Guerrera, I am half pulling your leg because as a teacher, and now you're going into politics,
yes.
the classroom still has childish people in it. And that's the point I was getting at. Because being a politician today, it doesn't seem like it's just about politics or it's just about solving problems. You're in the business of you're going from the business of emotional social development to actual social development. How do you see your knowledge and experience in helping us from your perspective as a future politician and how you can help Ontario's social development?
Well, look, I'll start by saying, I'm a leader in my field, right? I'm not just a frontline teacher. I'm a head of a social science department at a high school in Toronto, in the Toronto Catholic District School Board. I've written curriculum on the Holodomor Ukrainian genocide that's taught in classrooms across Canada. I've created, that came out of work I did creating an organization called Orwell Art that was teaching students about the importance of democracy and civic engagement through the arts. So I've been a leader in my field. I know education from the ground up. And I think I'm one of those voices in Ontario um, that can really bring that kind of experience to bear at the policy table, at the discussion table, in a moment when it is crucial that we get this right. We're not just 22 years into a new century here. We're 22 years into a new millennium and 2 years, into a pandemic. We really need to decide how we're going to invest in our students and in our children and create the system that prepares them for a future that's filled with challenges and opportunities and build a future for them where they can see themselves in. So to me, I think I'm, you know, very qualified to be able to bring that kind of experience from the ground to the table at the policy discussion level, which quite frankly hasn't always been there. And in this current government, I haven't seen there in the ways that I would want to see there as someone who works on the front line and as someone who believes in these systems. So that's kind of what I bring to bear there.
How do you see and what do you see it looking like if you had more control? What would be your guiding light in that regard?
Well, I mean, there's some of the policy positions that the Ontario Liberals have come forward with already, even though we haven't, put out our platform yet. One of the very first thing that was said by our leader Stephen Del Duca was, cancel the 413 highway, invest that 8 billion into education infrastructure, which is sorely lacking, and COVID, of course, has shone a light on that, particularly when we're talking about ventilation and things of that nature. But on top of that, because of the learning gaps that I've already mentioned, academic, social, and everywhere else, and the mental health strains that are being experienced by students, we need more than ever to have class sizes that are capped at no more than 20. And I'm speaking about high school, but it's even more so the case in elementary school. We at those pivotal ages. We also have to deal with not just mental health supports and making sure that we have staff in place that aren't just pivoting across 5 or 6 schools, right? But that they're dedicated to specific schools and school communities um, because they're needed more than ever. On top of that, special ed funding, that's a big one. We have so many students with special needs. We actually just released certain policy pieces that will be part of our platform around supporting students with autism, and many of those had to do with actually creating those supports in schools to limit wait lists for certain services or testing or whatever else. So those are things I would do immediately as a visionary on top of the policy pieces that are there right now. To me, building resiliency into our education system, teaching students that how to build things into processes. It's not just a product that you produce, but the process on how you get there. To me, that helps to build resilience and tenacity, which they're going to need, and we're going to quite frankly need them to have as future leaders in our society. These are things that I would do. These are things that we're proposing as an Ontario Liberal Party. And there's going to be more conversations happening. Right now, so much of what we've done and what I've had the honor and pleasure to do as part of the education policy squad for the Ontario Liberal Party is listen, sit down and listen with stakeholders from various positions and perspectives in education and take into account what it is that they're seeing and build that into how we're building our platform. So to me, that has been deeply informative. Even though I come from 20 years in education, I'm seeing it from certain lenses and certain perspectives. And so listening has been such a valuable exercise that I know will mean that we're going to actually do this right. Not just on the platform we introduce, but actually in government, hopefully, God willing, on June 2nd or June 3rd, I should say, the day after.
The one thing that education should lead to is employment opportunities and creating the best kind of workers for what we need. There's always we both come from the Italian culture, and nonna and mama,
See?
grandma and mom, they love when you wear a suit and go to work. But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people who don't wear suits to go to work, you get the point I'm getting at. Sometimes the education system needs to be more broad-minded and ensure that the education is provided for the needs that show up. Construction is something people, sometimes think of as, below oneself, right? How can we improve the image of that kind of work from the educator's perspective? Because I know I built some schools. I was in construction. I built some schools, and one of the schools in Oshawa was a school for the trades, right? And they couldn't convince students to come, and they were offering them more than they could earn in a lot of other places, and that wasn't good enough because they didn't look at the way the principal explained it to me. It doesn't look like a good job. How can we
You
get to that where
you know,
that is
Frank,
a good job?
so Frank, first of all, I'm gonna agree with you there. And I'm gonna say, first of all, thank you for your service. And thank you to every other person that goes to work hard and works hard, excuse me, to build the homes that we need to have. We have a shortage to build the infrastructure that's going to help us get around and make our economy move. Not to mention the very buildings that I work in. So to me, you pointed it out. I come from that background. My grandfather was a glazer. Okay, long line of manual labor and tradesmen in my family. My uncle was a butcher. I think we were talking about that before.
Yep.
So, and my brother, by the way, trained as a chef. So to me, you're very right in pointing out that there has been, certain, especially from parents leading their children or hoping to lead their children down certain academic pathways. But if we look around, who's been working, whose industries are still thriving, is so much of that in the trades. And so I get excited personally when I hear a student talk about the trades, when I see them do a cooperative education opportunity in the trades. And I think we need to have more of that. Mitzi Hunter, MPP Mitzi Hunter, who of course represents the riding of Scarborough-Guildwood, when she was the education minister, was making great strides towards more experiential education to support things of that nature. And I think we need to do more of that. To me, I think there's really creative ways that you can do it. Um, Partnering in some ways with some of the leadership that's already happening in the trades. Um, so to me, I think there's a whole opportunity here for people to move forward. But yeah, approaching that stigma, it's hard. It's hard for just an education system to convince a parent of what they want for their child. Obviously, that's their child. They're going to make that decision. But creating opportunities and pathways where different students and different types of learners can have an opportunity to move forward is very much the case. And I will agree with you that our education system is to prepare people for the workforce. But I believe that it's more than that. In my heart of hearts, and I've literally dedicated my life to this, Frank, it's to prepare people for the economy, to create a competitive economy that's innovative, that keeps us as one of the largest subnational economies in the world in Ontario and and a G7 country in Canada. But it's also to create great, responsible, and contributing productive citizens. And both of those things have to happen in our education system. And that means they have to be thoughtful and have opportunities to give the best of who they are and contribute to the society, because that's how we're at our best, I believe.
At the end of the day, the better the job, the more the taxes, the more we can invest in education and other things. So it propels itself. People sometimes, I think, if you could help us to understand the importance of the relationship between the government, education, employment, and how important it is, especially now where we've had a basically a um, employment. People talk about gig jobs.
Yes,
And people
yes.
like me don't even know what a gig job is. Don't really know what it is, right? So there's different ways that we can have people earn money and help support the government and people in general. For what reason? For healthcare. How do you feel about healthcare and where we are right now, and what improvements do you see in the offing that's necessary? I know you don't have a platform yet, but I'm sure you have personal opinion on how we can
Well,
make the healthcare system work better.
so I mean, I could not possibly go into the weeds on healthcare. I mean, I could go into the weeds on education as long as you would like. But I will tell you that I have healthcare professionals in my family. My sister's a nurse. She's a manager at one of Toronto's major hospitals now. Started as a frontline nurse and an educator, and is now managing patient care. My cousin is a nurse, so we're teachers and nurses in my family with a chef in the mix. And so I would hear from them every day throughout COVID about the challenges they were dealing with, and we need to have more frontline workers. We need to treat them well. We need to, and it's true of any public industry, we need to attract talent, we need to nurture talent, and we need to retain talent. And we have a great deal of it right here in Ontario. But we have, the burnout rate is high. The regulation that keeps their pay increase at 1%, that's got to go. That was not brought about by any type of collective bargaining or consultation. And that's a problem because these are the very people that have kept us healthy and going throughout the pandemic. And they've been burnt out working shift after shift after shift where they can't take any time off to even just recuperate. So my lens is through nurses. Of course, we have a lot of doctors on our Ontario Liberal team. Talk about PSWs, because I don't think you can talk about healthcare without talking about our seniors in long-term care. And the thing is that dignity has to be at the center of it and not just a price tag. We can talk about beds all the live long day. We can add beds, but for every bed that's added, you need another 4 staff to do that work. They should be paid properly. They should be trained. They should be taken care of and allowed to recuperate. To me, that's the basic bare minimum that we could do. But we have to make sure that the funding is adequate for the system in order for it to be a great public system that we can carry on into the future and not break down into some, other version of healthcare that I don't think would benefit uh, the people of Ontario. That's kind of my position. I know that's the position of our party, and I know you're going to be hearing more uh, on details around that.
Yeah, the biggest issue that came up because of the pandemic is capacity, and that capacity is what keeps everybody out on the street as opposed to hiding in their homes, right? The better the capacity of hospitals, the longer it takes for us to shut down. That's the one lesson we've learned. The capacity in Ontario has been very low, and I think you alluded to it a little bit about not paying, healthcare workers a fair wage, right? I get that, and we've got to keep them in here. I mean, there was a long time going back with Davis where tens of thousands of nurses trained in Ontario went to Florida because they were paying them more. Do you see that hemorrhaging ending? And you know, can the Ontario government, as it sits today with the tools that it has, can we improve our healthcare system so that it can handle a little more capacity than it has in the past? And is that important?
I think it's desperately important, especially with the demographic that we have, let alone the pandemic and the fact that people talk about there being more waves coming and or more pandemics in the future. But the very fact that we have an aging demographic, and by the way, people, Frank, like Nona and Mama and Nono, who came here and literally built this country, you know, they deserve to age with that kind of dignity. So to me, it's crucially important that we do that. And yes, it has to do with wages. It has to do with supporting people as they go into those university or college programs to be able to become PSWs, nurses, and so on throughout the system. We need to be able to support all of that. And yes, it requires the funding. To me, it has to start with the idea that this isn't a system just driven by dollars. It has to be a system driven by humanity, right? These are human systems. And you have to ask ourselves, what is our goal? What are our values? And is what we're doing leading us to that direction? And then we can talk about the price tag. Yes, it has to be in balance. Yes, it has to be fiscally responsible, 100%. But what is it that we're trying to do? And are we on the trajectory of getting there? And if not, then we really have to reconsider that. And this 2 years right now has given us that moment, that pause, and the urgency to have to do that. So it's imperative that we do.
I think it's a lot like I'm going to delve into my construction experience. It's like having a leak on the first floor or on the second floor, water leak, and you know there's a problem. And I'm paralleling here.
Mm.
The healthcare system has a bit of a leak. It didn't run as well as it could have. And in my opinion, and I'll ask you, if the healthcare system works better, our shutdowns are less, and then with the economy going, the longer we keep the economy going, the more money it makes, the less damage the fact that our healthcare system might be suffering a little. Maybe we learn that maybe we need to take care of that leak so
Mm.
that we don't do even more damage, in support of what you're trying to say. That's the way I would frame it. And I've begun to frame the problem. Our healthcare system needs to work better so that our economy is allowed to function, because that's really the issue that we learned about healthcare, that it can stop it can stop our
Yeah.
economy.
You're right on the money there, Frank, I think. And it comes down to, I believe, if we zoom out for a minute, away from political agendas and whatever. As a human, me as a human speaking to you as a human about a really important moment where we have to get this right. We have to get this right. Are we looking short term at what we're going to sell 4 years down the road or 2 years down the road and what candy we're going to give out at election time? Or are we talking long term and being visionary here and aspirational about how we can do this? And I believe this is a moment where Ontario needs to be in that second place. We need to be in the place where we're looking longer term at what it is we're trying to do. By the way, that's the stuff that motivates me to run. Okay. I have a great job. I love my job. I'm not looking for a new job, although I really hope I get one on June 2nd. It's not about that. It's about transformative public service. And it's about bringing that experience, passion, responsibility to bear in a new position in government. And we need that to be happening from every single person that's elected. And by the way, every single person that goes to the poll to vote, because we're in this together. And we have to create a future that's going to have a place for all of us in it with dignity. And you know what? We owe that to ourselves. We owe that to each other. And we owe it to Nono and Nonna and Mama and our children.
We owe it to each other, regardless of who you are, where you come from. As a province, the provincial government in Ontario right now has a lot of challenges that, it's easy. We live in a world that's so easy to criticize for the sake of criticism. And I think, to your point about having a long-term
Mhm.
goal, it's hard today to have that long-term goal. How do you see um, being able to give that message, land that message? Because the message is a good one. I don't think anyone will argue on any side of the political world about let's make our province better. Forget about Liberal, New Democrat, Green, Conservative. Ontarians, we want our province to be better. For it to be better, we need to speak to each other. How do we have that conversation? Because we live in a world today where, unfortunately, I was preparing you for my opinion, which is we spend too much time arguing over nothing and accomplishing even less.
Oh, you sound like my dad, Frank.
Well, that's probably because I'm old enough to be your dad. How's that for a kick in the
His name
pants?
is Tony. Um, no, the beauty of our democratic system here in Canada, and I say this as a civics teacher, is that it's based on dialogue. Parliament is about discussion and debate. And you're right, it has to start with talking, and it has to always leave space for talking in different positions and so on. But yes, we've spent a lot of time highlighting what divides us. And maybe if we, I think there's a lot more that unites us. I think we have a lot more in common than we have that divides us, um, as people. So to me, when I go to the doors and I speak to voters pretty much every day in York South Weston, that's the message I'm giving, which is I'm listening. Let's talk. What's on your mind? I don't say, are you going to, vote Liberal? Of course, I want you to do that. And I'm going to get there later in the conversation, but I want to listen. I want to hear. I want to learn, because it's from those different positions that we're going to come up with the best ways forward. And you hope that's what's happening in government. It isn't always happening. We need it to happen, right?
Absolutely. By definition, service is about listening, because if you're going to serve people, you have to hear them and understand their needs. And I think both of us can agree that we don't have all the answers. I have even less than you, by the way. We don't have all the answers, and part of being a politician, you use the word service, and that's something that, when you go out to talk to voters, I think I think out there people don't believe that politicians are wanting to serve. And and that's the challenge for people. I want to make this clear. Even those who do truly honestly want to serve, there's a bridge you have to go over. And as a person on the outside, as just a voter myself, I sit there and I go, no, okay, now how are they going to get that message across? And then you watch the debate. So the important issues, if the easiest way for me to ask and to get an answer from you, how do you approach somebody at the door and ask them what they're thinking about, and what have you heard in talking to people that has sort of changed your thinking?
Oh, well, to be honest, I don't know if it's changed my thinking.
Sharpened it? Maybe
Yeah,
sharpened
I
it?
think what it does is it really just it gives you a sense of what's on people's mind. Um,
What is on their minds? In your mind, what have you
wow.
heard so far?
Well, I've heard a lot because I've been knocking on doors for about a year now, whenever it's been safe to do so and not in, a lockdown or a stay-at-home order. Um,
And I realize you're constrained by the fact that, your leader hasn't we don't have a platform. You don't have a platform yet, so it's
well,
kinda hard to,
well,
but,
I will tell you,
generally speaking.
people, and it's the same thing for my students. I've spoken to many, many, and many of them, about 200 of them in the past couple of months, quite because I've switched from one semester to another, and then knocked on hundreds and thousands of doors. People are concerned about their cost of living. People are concerned about housing. People are concerned about the fact that they work every day and they can't make ends meet. So I'm going to use the word dignity again, and that is one thing that we have talked about is economic dignity. And it's like, Nadia, I have to decide between paying my rent or buying groceries. I have to, students saying, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to own a home in this province, never mind this city. Uh, Seniors saying, I've worked my lifetime and I can't make ends meet, and I don't want to have to leave my home to go live somewhere, God knows where, after working a whole life. These are the things I'm hearing about, on top of, education and healthcare and all of this, which is paramount for many people, especially during the pandemic. So how I approach it is, I know it's different at every door, really, because I'm very much a people person. I kind of get the vibe of who's in front of me, and I try to meet them where they're at. Maybe that's the teacher in me, but so it's maybe a little different every time, but it always comes down to, here's who I am. I'm running, but I'm your neighbor. I'm a teacher in this community. And, I just want to check in. How are you? How's your family? How are you managing? What's on your mind? And then it
You
goes from
raised a
there.
couple.
What's that?
You
Sorry?
you raised you raised a couple, the inflation thing, the cost of living, all that kind of stuff. How much of that can Ontario, I'm sorry to have interrupted, but,
No, please.
I really want to understand from your perspective, what tools are you using to attack those issues? Because those issues you mentioned they're very key. They're ringing in my head right now. We hear it in the world. The
Yes.
cost of fuel, the cost to pay your bills at home, the fact that salaries or paychecks aren't keeping up with inflation, all that kind of stuff. What can you do, and what can the Liberals do if you're in power to work on each of those issues?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great question. And what I will say is, just to start out with, there's so many, and this is where the power of government to bring about transformative uh, change is so important. And it can't happen, with an axe. It has to happen with a scalpel. You have to be measured. You have to be thoughtful. You have to think longer term. So, for example, right away, you don't cap people's wages at 1% without having a negotiation with them. Number one. That's number one. Every public sector worker in Ontario has been capped that way now for years, and inflation's at 5.5%. You approach that. Okay. You also do things like, which I love, and Stephen Del Duca has brought this up, is talk about portable benefits, benefits that follow workers, including dental and mental health. You talk about how do we make this a more manageable environment for small businesses? So, whether that means supporting ones that have been deeply hit by COVID by lifting their corporate taxes for a couple of years to give them a bit of relief, or getting rid of the incorporation fees for local startups. You want that. You want that kind of innovation to be going on. These are just a couple of things that you can mention, but overall, it's all about these kind of government levers. But you have to believe that it's the government's job to be involved in this stuff. And I have to say, without getting super partisan here, but I haven't seen that the Ford government really believes in that all the time. They held back, held back, held back so much, and now they're giving a whole bunch of stuff away. To me, childcare, oh my goodness, that's a huge one. That saves families 20 to $30,000 a year per child. And
Affordable childcare, if I can use the
yes,
term.
yes, thank you, $10 a day, affordable childcare, and available and accessible to people. So these things, these are super important. OSAP, my God, would I have ever been able to go to Queen's University if I didn't have OSAP? There's no way. I wouldn't have been able to do that. But students who had that all of a sudden had that cut and it was gone. These are things that make life affordable. But you have to have a government that believes that it's their role to be a player in these things. You can't just think, oh, small government, it's not the government's job, pay for it yourself. We'll cut taxes. And then the back end of that sentence that never gets discussed is now it's all user fees. It's all on you. And it's that great myth that it's going to be more money in your pocket, but it isn't. It's going to be more weight on your shoulders. And so finding a balance to be fiscally responsible about how you do that, attracting revenues to the province while investing in these programs and institutions that are going to make life better for people. That's how to do it. And honestly, that's why I'm a liberal, because I actually believe we can do that really well, and we have. Not perfect all the time, because nobody is, but with that intention in mind, and working towards those goals. To me, I believe that you have to have that vision, and belief that it's your role, and then build out towards that in consultation.
What you were talking about earlier, which was about productivity and generally speaking, creating an environment for better taxpayers. And by better taxpayers, I mean people who create jobs, who find ideas, you know, the ingenuity of people not being constrained by ceilings. When you talk about OSAP, essentially that's one way that people can improve their lives regardless of what their background is, right? But
Yeah.
it's not just a charity, right? It gives a people an opportunity to create a better self and a higher paying tax self, and also creating jobs. It's the same story about immigration, right? Why do we want immigrants to come here? Some immigrants today, especially in Canada and Ontario, has benefited where some immigrants come in and actually create jobs. Isn't that what we want? Is that what you're proposing? Like, is that
Well, so you want not just to create jobs, but you want to create, like, you want a society, at least I do, where people see a place for themselves, have opportunities to grow, right? And actually contribute. And by doing that, that growth spurs on more growth and more opportunity and more, how do you want to say, decent quality of life, dignity. You work hard every day. You should be able to have something to show for it. That's not hard. That's why people chose to come to this country. That's why Ontario has been one of the greatest places to live. So we have to engineer that going forward, but it's not going to happen by happenstance and by thinking that the government doesn't have a role to do it. We need that kind of leadership. By the way, we need it in every level.
I think we also sometimes what happens with the Liberal Party, it's not just about immigrants. It's about local Canadians who, for whatever reason, end up in a situation where their families don't have the kind of money that people assume long-lasting Canadians have. So when we talk about opportunities, I just want to make sure people understand that this isn't just opportunities for people who are immigrants. This is opportunities for Canadians, young people who have, the brightest and smartest, having the avenue to improve our economy.
Yes, I think the stat is for every $1 invested in education, you get another $7 back later on the other end of that economy. So you reap what you sow. That's the first thing I said. What is it that we want to reap in Ontario? Well, we have to sow that now. And that requires investment, it requires belief. And we have to literally create the systems that are going to do that for us and give people the opportunity to literally be the best of themselves. By doing that, we can be the best of ourselves and we can be not just, a strong economy, but leaders in the world as we have been. We have a world-class education system and we're at a pivotal moment. It's same thing with our health system. We're at a pivotal moment. We can either wait and follow someone else's trajectory or we can lead. It's this moment. This is our moment right now. What are we going to do about it? I'm running for office because I believe that I can help to do something about it with my 20 years of experience on the front line. But we all have to do something. We all have to. I hope
When you
it'll start by voting on June 2nd. For me,
when,
if you're
when
in
you
York Southwestern.
when you talk about affordable housing, there are actually people out there who go, "Wait a minute, hold it. I like the price of my house right now."
Right.
How do you square that circle? Because when you talk about affordable housing, there are people out there who are going, "Well, it's just fine as far as I'm concerned." You know what I'm saying. I mean, it's the reality of it, right? And the
Look,
Liberal Party and you as a politician have to square that circle.
Well, look, I think it comes down to this. And the federal government has just released an incredible budget where Minister Hussein, my federal counterpart here in York Southwestern, is the first ever Minister of Housing, Diversity, and Inclusion in Canada, and literally robust pieces that have come out in that budget. And I'll leave it to him to announce what those things are. But I think you're going to see really great things. And although people might feel, oh yeah, the price of my house went up. That's great. Well, if you were to sell it tomorrow, where would you go, and what would that cost you? And I'd venture to guess that in most cases, people would end up with a larger mortgage than they had today if they were even able to be in that market. So people might think that way short term, but I don't think anybody wants to see a market where their children don't have an opportunity, right?
That
Where their children have to move, to somewhere else in order to even raise a family. My brother lives down the street from me here in York Southwestern, raising a little 6-month-old adorable baby girl with his wife in a one-bedroom apartment, and really waiting to see, can we have another child? Will we be able to afford a home? Where are we going to go? That shouldn't be the thing that people's entire existence is consumed with. Can I afford a roof over my head? Like, when did that happen? We have to change this. So to me, even though the feds are doing a ton about that, um, and the municipalities are doing some really great work. A good friend of mine, Deputy Mayor Anna Bailao, is of course our spokesperson and our advocate in Toronto around affordable housing. There's a role for the province to play in all of that. And whether it's funding or whatever else is yet to be determined. But I certainly think some of the municipal zoning orders that are being given out by this government and building into the greenbelt might be something we might want to reconsider, right? As we ask, where do we want to do this and how do we want to do this? So it's about making it sustainable. If people are going to do well as a result of an investment, then let's make sure that that doesn't just exist for people who are already in the game.
Yeah, unfortunately, the reality of economics is earning power, right? And then once, like, that's the whole point of education. You want to allow people the best opportunity to have earning power. And then there's the spending power. We've discussed the earning power and where that comes from, good education and opportunities, right? And now when you earn money, Can you earn enough? How do you feel about minimum wage? And is it something that, affordable wage is what people talk about, affordable, daycare. The word affordable, it transcends a lot of places. How can you, what is your light that you chase to ensure? Because it sounds to me like that's what you're looking for and what you're trying to help people with is to make life more affordable.
Yeah, listen, again, I'll use the word that we've been using, economic dignity. It's not just about it being
But how do you
affordable.
get there? How do you get there?
You get there with a broad swath of policies, like some of the ones I mentioned, whether it be portable benefits or you talked about right now a minimum wage. Well, let's be innovative about it. For the first time ever, Ontario Liberals now are not just talking about a minimum wage increase to $60 an hour. We're talking about a living wage, which means it's looking regionally at that. Okay, that 15 or $16 an hour looks like this in North Bay or some, I'm just picking a random place in
Gotcha.
Ontario, a great place if you're from North Bay. Um, but it might not translate into the same quality of life in Toronto. So maybe it has to be shifted and different and regionally aggregated to be able to mean the same quality of life in different areas. And so we've actually, that is one of the things we have proposed around our economic dignity piece, in addition to the portable benefits and things like this. So let's be thoughtful, let's be innovative, and let's bring in things like this that affect real people's lives. It's easy to give away $120 for a license plate sticker. That's great. People can appreciate that. I'm going to appreciate that. Okay. But that's like giving a person a fish for a day and not giving them, you know, the
The fishing
opportunities to
rod.
fish for themselves. Yeah, exactly. It's, you know what I mean? So it's like, we have to build these things in. And it comes back down to who believes, which parties believe that that's the government's responsibility.
So that I understand what you just said, and this is the dichotomy of the economy, right? In essence, in Canada, we don't have just one economy. We have various economies. You shed some light on it. The point being to what you said was, and the reason why you're saying that a minimum wage in Toronto is different than in North Bay. It doesn't matter where you have a more expensive place to live. People need to earn more money. Is the bottom line. And the other thing is the people who employ them, if they don't have the kind of business that can afford to pay that minimum wage, because the economy in North Bay doesn't require, it's a little more laid back than it is in, let's say, Ontario, because the rent is cheaper, all these different things. So this is the point you're trying to make, that basically you have to be there has to be some intuitiveness into how you deal with stuff.
Yeah, we talk about the living wage, and to me, the idea of a living wage, the idea of portable benefits, these are innovative ways of trying to approach these issues from a government and policy position. There has to be partnerships with employers. All of these things that go on. It's not just the government's job, but it's also the government's job. And these are some of the ways that we can make a positive difference.
How are benefits portable?
So I believe they follow the worker, or the way I'm understanding it. Again, I'm not part of that policy squad, but the way I'm understanding it is that the benefits follow the worker. There's many, especially you mentioned the gig economy, people who are working on contract might not have that. So they'll need to have something that's provided for them from Ontario that then follows them when they move, so that they're not stuck continuously in contract positions or not working full-time hours. And to be able to get those things, people need them.
So, in essence, if I can put a word in your mouth, people get credit for they were working before as a gainfully employed person who's putting into the healthcare system, and therefore they shouldn't have to start over in the next job.
Yeah, it follows them. And think about it. I mean, we're living in a reality where people, sometimes aren't working just one job, or if they are, they're not hired in a full-time uh, situation. So they might be just shy of the hours they need to get something, or they might be in a contract and not full-time, so they have to be doing other things. So this is just the reality, and you need to have policies at the provincial level, at any level really, to be able to reflect that new reality and still be able to allow for economic dignity for people. And so this is the kind of things that Ontario Liberals are proposing. Um, And I'm excited to see more when our platform actually rolls out, because you can bet that it's going to be along those lines. It's going to be along the lines of trying to tackle these larger issues with a deep-seated belief that it is our job as a government to play a part in this.
Listening, listening is a, you know, my mother used to say, "You're listening, but not actively listening." So, as a politician, as a prospective politician, how do you define actively listening and getting the message out there that when it comes to, for example, if I can, institutions in Ontario, the important ones, whether it be social, we were talked about education, we talked about health, and every other institution in Ontario has suffered because of the pandemic. How do you see, um, and what kind of pecking order, how you can deal with a lot of the governmental issues where there's shortfalls economically, right? Where you can print as much money as you want, but how can you see, using your way of looking at things, on helping institutions rise up?
Well, one thing we've done as the Ontario Liberal Party in producing this platform is something that I'm very proud of, actually. And that is creating an entire consultative process towards the development of a platform. It's not just releasing it in a timely manner because it's the best thing for media or something like this. It's because we've actually been engaging in real consultation. So started out with, our take the mic exercise, where there were rounds of questions in different policy areas, having people weigh in, discussions, etc. That's 60,000 people input into that take the mic process. Then from there, we got broken down candidates from across Ontario in our different areas of expertise or interest, broken down into policy squads, where it wasn't just backroom staffers. God bless them, and they do such amazing work. Thank you for that. But the rest of us candidates who might actually be sitting in those seats very soon, meeting with stakeholders in every single policy area. Mine was education. There was healthcare. There was ones on economic dignity. There were ones on the environment and sustainability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so seniors in long-term care. So we literally sat down and for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, met with different stakeholders and literally listened, listened, listened. And the result of that take the mic, 60,000 people's input and all of those policy conversations across all policy areas, that is what you're going to see reflected in the platform. So it's not the Ontario Liberal platform, it's the platform put together by the Ontario Liberal Party based on what we have heard from people across Ontario in every area. To me, that is what active listening looks like. You don't just do it at the door, although I love doing it at the door and I look forward to doing more of it as we lead up to the election. But you have to build in processes that do that. You don't just come out with an announcement and then tell the unions or the education how do I want to say, school boards, that this is what's happening by decree. You need to do that in consultation if you care about actually putting out the best policies. To me, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I guess, I used to have lots of meetings, and always used to tell the guys who have a meeting, guys and gals, y'all show up here with what you want, but all you can hope for and best I can do is give you what you need. And our needs sometimes are interfered with by our wants. Um, uh, in regards to that kind of thinking, how do you prioritize what's important? For example, we talk about the economy and you talk about, the cost of fuel. Ontario has very little to say about that. People need the price of gas to go down. Is there something Ontario can do that you're aware of that Ontario can do to help to bring the price down?
Well, I'm not sure about the global cost of oil because there's a bit of a hot mess going on in the world right now, very sadly, in Ukraine and so on, that I think is affecting everything around it. But then one thing that should be done, and one thing that we did do the last time the Ontario Liberals were in government, was actually invest in alternatives. There was an entire infrastructure being built around electronic vehicles that got scrapped the minute the Ford government came into power. Now there's a conversation about potentially doing it again, now that it might look lucrative. But you can't just come late to the party. You've got to, if you're going to be the innovator, you got to get there ahead of time. You've got to read the tea leaves and and create those opportunities so that by the time the need is there, you are the leader. Ontario is the leader on doing this. That's how you succeed. That's how you, by the way, also draw investment into the province, in my, in my opinion. So I think you continue to move with alternatives. You diversify your economy. You provide opportunities for people to do these things, and then you try to lead in any way possible. So yes.
It's important that um, today more than ever, those seem to be the driving issues: inflation, wages, the healthcare system. But most of all, it's about cost. Everything costs so much, and we said at the beginning of the show. Um, but I would like to end on a positive note, and
Okay.
that is that as far as you're concerned, as a politician, um, what can you say in a positive sense that you feel you can explore and help Ontarians feel more confident? Because I can do another half hour on mental illness and how that kind of stuff has been impactful. But how do you see yourself in helping Ontarians to recover emotionally from this? I've only got a couple of minutes left, but because that's one of the things that we have to do and that you need to help us do as politicians.
Yeah. So I will come back and harp back again on the heart with which I am approaching this um, moment in my life of stepping up and saying, "I'm here to serve you. I'm here to listen and to serve." Um, to me, I think that spirit people need to feel that. Okay. Um, I think the listening exercise is a really important thing, and then understanding, at least on from my position as the Ontario Liberal candidate here in your Southwestern, and part of a team that's so dynamic uh, for the Ontario Liberal Party, is you have experienced people, not just in politics, but also in every one of these areas. I am a frontline worker. I have been that for 20 years. You are going to have thoughtful, experienced people in these positions. Should you vote for us? Should we earn that confidence? And we will be able to bring that to bear, not just in the policies that are created, but the questions that we ask and the consultations that we engage in, which will allow people to see themselves reflected in those policies and in those, bills, laws, et cetera, that go forward. That is how I think people will heal, is by having hope and by having that spirit of real commitment to positive change and service. And that's the kind of leadership we need. And we deserve that kind of leadership. That's why I'm stepping up. So thank you for this opportunity.
It was totally my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to share with us. Always willing to listen to prospective politicians and hear what's out there as far as you guys are concerned.
Thanks so much, Frank. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That is the provincial Liberal candidate for York Southwestern, Nadia Guerrera. Thank you very much for being here. We hope you enjoyed the program, folks. It's time for you to do your homework. Uh, you know, whether you vote or not, that's up to you. Whether you complain about who's in power, that's up to you too. You can make a difference. And we hope this was a little bit of an education for you in continuing. And I hope learning about politics and learning about what candidates offer, you can make a difference. So thank you for doing this. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live's Open Forum, seen live Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Open Forum, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time.